Hey, what's up?
Nader, you just have the best camera set up on the internet. I don't know.
He's a
You're
pro.
always so
He's a pro.
crisp, man.
I sent back like 5 different cameras during my time trying to experiment with all this stuff, to be honest. So I
What are you
appreciate
rocking?
that. It's a Sony, I think it's like A7 IV or something like that, or
Nice.
i7 IV. I don't really remember now.
Is that what we have? We have a Sony something.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. They just showed up in the mail for me, and I plugged it in, and it's working. So
Yeah.
I think Peace went pretty deep on it.
Yeah, nice. All right, so Nader, you're the DevRel and Dev Experience lead at EigenLayer, focused on expanding adoption of restaking and EigenLayer infrastructure. So, there's probably no better person on earth really to give us this kind of smooth brain overview of what EigenLayer and restaking is. So, wondering if we can start there. Like, what is EigenLayer for someone that maybe doesn't care a ton about infrastructure generally?
Totally.
AKA Josh. Josh,
AKA me.
I think ultimately it's about building apps. And I think if you kind of look at the restrictions that you have, like this is a little bit getting into the developer part of this, but it kind of is important. But if you kind of look at building an application on a smart contract, you have different virtual machines. You have the Move virtual machine. You have the Ethereum virtual machine. You have like 3 or 4 major VMs. There's like very little you can actually do within that. So therefore, we've seen a lot of the same types of applications being built really over the last 10 years, typically revolving around tokens of some sort. So you have like ERC20 tokens or NFTs was kind of like the main form of tokens. But if you wanted to actually build something like a social media application, or if you wanted to talk to the real world, and I guess an example of this would be like DeFi protocols that have oracles that get information from the real world. Those are really, really more complex to build because you need a lot of the same verifiability that you get from within a virtual machine, but you need the flexibility of information from the outside world and maybe programmability from the outside world. And to actually make that happen in the past was very, very challenging because you literally had to build a new protocol from the ground up. So a good example of this would be Chainlink. Chainlink is an oracle. It's $1 billion company, but they do kind of like a limited amount of things. But to actually build that, it was an immense amount of work and effort over a long period of time. And if you wanted to say build a new product that's a new smart contract application, and you needed some new specialized information that Chainlink didn't provide or another oracle didn't provide, you're kind of out of luck, or you need to build that new product from the ground up. So the entire idea of EigenLayer is to kind of say, okay, anything that I need, any programming I need to do, any API I need to talk to, any database in the entire world, I want to be able to do that programming, but I want the same verifiability and the same security as an L1. And that's kind of what EigenLayer is. Developers can go and write all of that code, whatever programming language that they want, and they can then bring that verifiability of that information back on chain. And that's kind of the general idea.
So I guess the most recent announcement for you guys was for Eigen Cloud, which I think you say gives developers building on any blockchain the tools to finally build verifiable and trustless Web 2 applications and services. I'm curious, what's the big unlock here that this product?
I would say it's almost 100% about developer experience and just making the whole process a lot easier. So the vision I just laid out is, realistic in the sense that we have dozens or, I would say around 50 or 60 different services live on mainnet. But we want really to tap into the millions of developers that are building, in the regular software industry, or at least the tens of thousands that are building on-chain applications. But in order to kind of ship a product on EigenLayer at the moment on the core protocol, it's kind of a lot of work still. Even though it's probably it is a lot easier than building from the ground up, it's still a decent amount of work. So Eigen Cloud are essentially going to be new primitives and new abstractions that just make it a lot easier. So the vision for us would be something like, and this is getting a little bit into technical stuff again, but I'll just use it as an analogy because this is a very, very successful multi-billion-dollar product and company. You have Amazon Web Services. They've launched a suite of services that are called serverless, I would say services. The most, I would say, popular and successful one is serverless functions. And the general idea with serverless functions is that you can just write your code and you deploy it to AWS and it scales for you and it deploys for you. It does everything for you. You don't have to worry about all that underlying infrastructure. this has turned into a massive business for them, because so many developers, they don't want to manage all of that underlying infrastructure, and companies don't want to pay engineers to do that either. So it's kind of like a cost savings and a time savings type of deal. What Eigen Cloud is essentially like implementing is going to be a similar programming environment, but for EigenLayer. You can just write your business logic, deploy it to our system, and then everything just kind of works.
Can you maybe put a finer point on the importance of verifiability? It seems like, reading a few of your blog points, it's really like the big thing that EigenLayer talks about. So like what is verifiability? I think clearer what it means in the crypto sense, but what's it mean in the kind of Web 2 sense?
Sure. So I think DeFi is another good example, because we've all probably used DeFi applications. If I used Aave and I want to, I don't know, like supply some ETH as collateral, or maybe I want to mint some stable coins or whatever, whenever the oracle that they're talking to is getting information about the current price of the US dollar relative to other currencies or things like that, you have to have that information verifiable, in the sense that if that information is wrong, there needs to be a penalty kind of like applied to the person that provided the wrong information, as an incentive for them to provide the correct information. That's kind of the core example of like why verifiability is important, because if that information was false, someone could arbitrage and fake something and then essentially steal money from everyone that's participating there. And there needs to be some mechanism in place to prevent that. So that's applied to money, but you can also apply that to really like any information that is brought on chain, because often, and for the most part, you are dealing with like financial, I would say, types of transactions on chain. So a good example of this in a more like EigenLayer specific use case would be something like a prediction market, right? If you want to build a prediction market, something like, I would say, Polymarket is obviously an example everyone knows. Let's say I want to build a custom prediction market around a high school basketball game my kid's participating in, and me and my friends want to just, I don't know, this is just an example of something you could build, right?
Josh is all in already.
Let's gamble on the kids. Let's gamble on the kids.
Yeah, we're gonna bet on chain on my kid's game or whatever. You need some way to bring that information on chain and to kind of make sure that information is correct. And that's kind of what you could build, with EigenLayer. Prediction markets and custom oracles are a really good example of a good use case.
So there's this entire vibe around right now, I think, of the maturing of crypto and the expansion of the markets and the number of participants and specifically developers. And it sounds like with Eigen Cloud, this is sort of a product that is positioning you for bringing in more developers into the space. I'm really interested in, from your vantage point, what are the conversations like? Are we seeing a new influx of developers who are seeing crypto rails in a new light and with new excitement?
I wouldn't say we're seeing a huge wave of new developers right now, to be honest. I think back in 2022, we kind of did. And that's another one of the things that I am personally focused and passionate about over the next 12 months, I would say. I think that what we've done, we've positioned crypto as kind of like its own silo, as opposed to just a programming primitive, like you might think of a database or an AI service or an API, right? So I think like what we need to do is position this as just a piece of the tech stack that anyone can decide to just utilize without really needing to be a crypto developer, right? And I think like with AI tools, with vibe coding and stuff, it makes it even more accessible. So I can just say, I want to build this financial application, and I want to receive payments. And one of the payments I want to enable is like crypto payments or something like that. That would be something that might open the door to certain people. Or if you want to build a social media application and you want to make a backend that's available to everyone in the world, and you want to make sure that API is not changed over the course of time, kind of like the Twitter API. So a big value proposition of blockchains is kind of like an analogy between Twitter API with the evolving restrictions of it over the last 10 or 15 years. It's kind of like it really resonates with a lot of people, because a lot of people built companies on top of this data. And then one day they just decided, oh, we're going to just shut it all off. Or we're going to change it. And then companies literally would just go out of business. If you had built that using a blockchain infrastructure, you can have that, I would say, immutability, but also you can kind of like have verifiability that your information is going to be there. And you can then, everyone can share that, and you can have composable front ends, Farcaster and Lens protocol and all these different things you're kind of seeing now. Even the base app is kind of like building on Farcaster, right? So you have these new primitives that can kind of be, layered on top of each other, and new applications that can share backends.
So we have a lot of founders who are at the very earliest stages of their journey, and many are building out products that are going to benefit from a rich developer ecosystem. I look to you as one of the best in the business at the DevRel role. I'm curious, like, what are the things that most early stage founders get wrong that you have to come in and undo once you bring your genius into a company? Like, what are the right things for us to do at the earliest stages to make the developer experience stronger, better, and more compelling?
I think one thing that I can say the best founders kind of do, it's that they're continually evolving and changing and questioning the things that they're doing, and they don't really get set on some path that they don't kind of pivot away from in some form or fashion. And typically it can be just like the tiniest things, but over time you kind of really, really start improving and iterating and making that product better. But if you kind of are stuck on that same path, I think the best founders that I've met are typically, of that, I would say, personality where they are completely open to improving and changing, and they're not stuck in their ways. So
how important would you say, like, culture is to DevRel? Because I think if I look across the space, like, developers they're really rarely choosing, the chain or protocol based on what's like technically the best, and they want to go where users are, where they feel cool by building within an ecosystem. So I guess, as you think about trying to attract developers to EigenLayer, like, how much are you just focused on like the culture surrounding the chain and kind of, retail interest in it as kind of being upstream of developer interest?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I think it depends on what you're building. I think that if you're building an application in the traditional sense of like a software company, I'm just going to go and build an app, and the only thing we care about is users. Those developers actually seem to not care at all, because and I would almost say that those are typically the best performing developers, because they're only and purely focused on user acquisition. And they realize like the actual users are not crypto people only. It's just kind of like you build a great product and everyone uses it. And if everyone on crypto Twitter, loves it, they're going to talk about it anyway. You don't really have to kind of incentivize that. Hyperliquid example obviously is incredible. No one was paid to really talk about that. I mean, obviously airdrops and all that stuff happened, but everyone just loves using it, and it was just objectively better product than anything else. So I think if you build with that in mind, I mean, no one knows that the Arbitrum stack was used, right? Or they do now maybe, but at the time they didn't care. Another example, Polymarket, the fact that it's built on Polygon, like, you might say, oh, like, that's not a great place to build, and they're probably going to pivot away from that at some point. Maybe they already are. I don't know. So that's just one example. But yeah, a lot of developers do care, and there are also examples of where that does matter. So you need to kind of take that into consideration. I think if you build the most high quality, best platform for developers to find success, that's kind of the most important thing. And then you can kind of build on top of that. Culture is obviously, important for a lot of people, and awareness, visibility. People care more to kind of have the founders and the influencers in the industry talking about their product than they would get like a $10,000 grant. They'd rather have that visibility instead of the money.
Yeah, I would describe how I see you moving in the space as one that very much values culture. I think that there's a sense of sort of openness and of support and of clarity that I think seems to follow you around. I think in the various roles that you've done before, and I think I see it very much at Eigen right now. So maybe not culture, the big C, who are the influencers talking about it, but I think we see it very much in what's the response time from a foundation or the team or the DevRel person, like how much leaning in is done there versus mouth service. And I think when you talk to developers and founders specifically, you get a very quick understanding of who's running a tight ship and really creating a compelling place to go build, and and who has a bunch of barriers up to doing it. So I don't know. I've always enjoyed how you create out there, man. It's a joy to see, and appreciate you hopping on today, giving us a bit of insight into Eigen. Josh now understands restaking, so that's going to be great.
Let's go.
Big new unlocks. Anything big happening? Anything to look forward to, and interesting things coming out of Eigen?
Well, today we launched Eigen DA V2. So Eigen DA is essentially an example of a product built on EigenLayer, and we've hit 100 megabytes per second bandwidth, which is an insane throughput. It's about 75 times or 60 times more scalable than Celestia, where I used to also work, which has an incredible product as well, and I respect that team a lot. But it's just a good example of like building a service faster, cheaper, better than a traditional like route. And yeah, we launched at 100 megabytes per second today. We're pretty excited about that. It's an insane feat. It's something I didn't think we would reach for another year, but yeah.
I love that we buried that right down in the end here. We we're like, it's a slow news day out there. Maybe we're not on the Eigen PR.
We just tweeted it out like 15 minutes ago. Yes.
Okay, well
there we go.
That's fine. That's breaking news. Love it. Nader, appreciate it, man. Best of luck and everything. And
thank you for having me.
All right, brother.
Cheers.
Peace, man.